Never had any problems with him. Great kid, just like everybody testified to. And he's great in sports, all around kid. Everything he did, he was good in.
Absolutely. I would love to have a classroom of Jordans. It would make teaching so easy.
Jordan was just one of those kids who you knew was going to go on and do great things. I could see him like going to college and walking across the graduation stage, and I mean, he had a future. He was just gonna do amazing things, you could tell.
This video was compiled using information which was made public via news or government agencies and is intended to honor the lives of those who met an unimaginable fate and also bring awareness to the unjust behaviors in our communities. On the night of April 29th, 2017, Jordan Edwards, a 15-year-old teenager, attended a house party with 2 of his brothers and 2 of their friends. Around 11 p.m., the group decided to leave as the house party had gotten out of control. Unfortunately, Jordan, a freshman student and athlete at Mesquite High School, would not make it home that night. This devastating incident took place in Balch Springs, Texas, within the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. According to initial reports, the officers were responding to a 911 call which reported several underage kids drunk walking around at a party of approximately 100 people. Upon arrival, the officers alleged that they had heard gunshots which created panic and caused partygoers to flee. Balch Springs Police Chief Jonathan Haber originally stated that there was an unknown altercation with a vehicle backing down the street towards the officers in an aggressive manner.
I unintentionally incorrect yesterday when I said the vehicle was backing down the road. In fact, according to the video that I viewed, the vehicle was moving forward as the officers approached. I'm saying after reviewing the video that I don't believe that it met our core values.
The Edward family attorney, Lee Merritt, had already publicly refuted the police chief's earlier claims. The Balch Springs Police Department issued a subsequent statement which said the vehicle then pulled forward as the officer continued to approach the vehicle, giving verbal commands as it continued on the main roadway, driving away from the officer. It was at that time the officer shot into the vehicle, fatally striking Jordan Edwards in the back of his head through the passenger side window after firing multiple shots. The teen was pronounced dead shortly after at a local hospital, though trial did reveal that he was killed instantly upon impact. The officer was Roy Oliver. Despite the alleged discrepancy, it should be noted that the Balch Springs Police Department has an official use of force policy which encourages officers facing an oncoming vehicle to attempt to move out of its path if possible, instead of discharging a firearm at it or any of its occupants.
Has cried out. Our souls have cried out to God. How long must we deal with the stain of police brutality?
A vigil was held at Jordan School on the evening of May 1st, 2017, where a lawyer for the Edwards family demanded the arrest of Oliver through a family statement. He further called upon those in charge to arrest and charge the other police on the scene that night and punish them for their treatment of the other occupants and family members. Lee stated that after the murder, the boys were immediately treated as common criminals by other officers, including being manhandled, intimidated, and arrested, while their brother laid dying in the front seat. The Dallas County Sheriff's Department alleged that the boys were held overnight and interviewed as witnesses. Later on, Mr. Merritt told NBC News that Jordan's father was detained when he arrived at the police station and he was accused of hostile behavior. Public and media reaction compared Edward's death to the killings of other young black children by police officers, and reactions also noted the discrepancy between the original police account and the follow-up. People all over the country began using the hashtag Jordan Edwards on social media in response to the shooting. The American Civil Liberties Union's division in Texas tweeted, "We need answers," tagging Balch Springs Police Department and adding that they should immediately release footage of the shooting. Roy Oliver was placed on administrative leave following the shooting and ultimately fired on May 2nd, 2017.
The investigation is complete. After reviewing the findings, I have made the decision to terminate Roy Oliver employment with the Balch Springs Police Department.
At the time, he had been a member of the Balch Springs Police Department for 6 years. After the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and the Dallas County District Attorney's Office conducted a preliminary investigation into the shooting, Oliver was charged with murder and a warrant was issued for his arrest on May 5th, 2017. He turned himself into police later the same day and was released after posting $300,000 in bail. On Saturday, May 6, 2017, about 800 people packed to the Mesquite Friendship Baptist Church for a 2.5-hour open casket celebration of the life of Jordan Edwards, a 15-year-old known for his humble and loving spirit. Attendees included Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price, Balch Springs Mayor Carrie Marshall, and Grammy-winning gospel singer Kirk Franklin. Jordan was described as the kid you wanted in your class by Mesquite High School principal Kevin Samples, who also said, as an adult, he was the kid who demonstrated that America has a bright future. As a fellow human, he was a kid who brought encouragement with his joy. He led his peers with character and finesse, and his presence is greatly missed. How did this all begin? When a Balch Springs teenager named Norris Rhodes learned that his mom was going to be out of town for the weekend. He decided to throw a party while she was gone and subsequently made an Instagram post which quickly took off. The news spread to the high schools in Mesquite, another Dallas suburb, and Jordan learned that his new girlfriend would be attending with her friends. He asked his older brothers, Kevon and Vidal, who was 17 at the time, if they would take him to the party. It was a regular Saturday morning for the boys, and they completed their chores. Later that day, they asked their father if they could borrow his car, a 2004 Chevrolet Impala with tinted windows, to go to Daenerys' home, which was only 3 miles away. Odell Edwards, the boys' father, gave them a midnight curfew and reminded them that they were not allowed to drink or do drugs, especially since he didn't want them getting into trouble. Just before arriving to the party around 9:30 p.m., they picked up 2 of their friends, twin brothers Maximus and Maxwell Everett. The group paid their $2 per person entry fee. Then Jordan found his girlfriend and stood with her. The others went to socialize with their friends. Around 11 p.m., a neighbor called 911 complaining that drunk teens were in the street. Within minutes, 2 Balch Springs police officers, Tyler Gross and Roy Oliver, both of whom were white, muscular Army veterans who had done combat tours in Iraq, showed up in separate squad cars. Within 20 minutes of the officer's arrival, a gray SUV pulled into the parking lot of a nursing home located a couple of blocks from the party house. Inside the SUV were 4 or 5 teenage gang members who went by the name the Bank Brothers. The entire incident was witnessed by Eric Knight and his friend Jeremy Seaton, who were 19 and 18 at the time. Knight said, "The gang members lowered their windows and started flexing, also known as showing off, while announcing their arrival. Some of the SUV's occupants stepped out, raised pistols above their heads, and started firing. A total of 12 shots were fired. Gross and Oliver ran out of the house, and Oliver stopped at his squad car and grabbed his rifle, an MC5 semi-automatic carbine, much like an AR-15. He then raced after Gross. Gross saw a black Chevrolet Impala backing away from him. Inside were Vidal, who was driving, Jordan, who was in the front passenger seat, and in the back seat were Kevon and the Everett twins. They had decided to leave the party and drive home to avoid any trouble. Gross shined his flashlight at the car, but did not identify himself as a police officer. He yelled, "Stop the car! Stop the effing car!" The officer was still able to get close enough to hit the rear window with the butt of his pistol, shattering the glass. But Vidal put the car into drive and steered away from Gross. Later, he said he didn't think it was an officer due to the profanities. Oliver quickly raised his rifle and in less than a second fired 5 rounds at the car. 4 of the bullets hit the car itself, but 1 of the bullets went through the front passenger window and fatally struck Jordan in his head, killing him instantly. Vidal told the jurors that he had no idea who shot 5 times at the Impala. He said he turned and saw Jordan slump forward in his seat, blood pouring out of his head, and his bottle of strawberry lemonade still between his legs. Within minutes, he, Kevon, and the Everett twins were ordered out of the car by other Balch Springs police officers who had just arrived. The officers' body cams showed the boys put their hands on their heads and walked backward away from the car. "Please, sir, my little brother is dead in the car," Vidal pleaded with the one officer. "He's dead in there." Later, Vidal asked that officer if they could pray together for Jordan. He said he wanted to ask God to watch over his little brother.
Over my brother, no matter what happens. I think you can say I love him, but I keep working, God. I didn't miss anything that happened like this. He wanted to go to the party, and I was supposed to supervise him. God, I just pray that you keep your hands on him, and I pray that you help him pull through, and if he does, God, just release him into your kingdom. In Jesus' name, I do pray, amen.
A psychological test that Oliver took for the Balch Springs Police Department concluded that he had an elevated score on the risk-taking index. According to the examiner who evaluated Oliver's test, he may feel so insensitive to threat that his judgment may be impaired in evaluating the risk of danger. His sense of entitlement may be so strong that the possibility of him behaving in an antisocial manner must be considered. Nevertheless, Police Chief Haber liked the fact that Oliver had an admirable military record, and he brought him onto the force as a patrol officer.
Jordan Edwards.
Justice! I'm Charmaine Edwards. I was Jordan's mother and still am Jordan's mother. He was 15 when he was killed by Balch Springs Police Department. His favorite color was red, and he loves football, and we are all fighting for justice.
Hello, I'm Odell Edwards, Jordan's dad, and his favorite color is red. Calling J Money, and we're fighting for justice.
Dozens of protesters from the North Texas Action Committee marched through the Deep Ellum Entertainment District on August 11, 2018, to demand justice for Jordan Edwards. Marchers assembled at a park on Swiss Avenue before marching through the community. While marching, they chanted, "Say his name, Jordan Edwards," and "Indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell." Protesters had signs calling for justice for Jordan Edwards, in addition to a large banner that read, "Community Unity Against Police Terror." Despite being postponed twice before, the trial of Roy Oliver for the murder of Jordan Edwards began in August 2018. The video from Gross's and Oliver's body cams revealed that Vidal was driving the Impala away from the two officers when Oliver started shooting. During the trial, Gross himself testified that he did not feel in fear of his life as the Impala went past him. He also testified that he did not feel any need to fire his weapon at the Impala as Oliver had. "I just wanted them to stop," he said. During his testimony, Oliver placed the blame for Jordan's death directly on Jordan's brother, Vidal. He said if Vidal had just listened and stopped the car, this shooting wouldn't have happened. After his testimony, several persons attending the trial expressed sentiments noting that if the disgraced officer was trying to show the jury that he felt remorse, he didn't do a good job. In his final argument, Prosecutor Snipes described Oliver as an angry, out-of-control, trigger-happy walking time bomb. He said that the body cam videos irrefutably proved that Oliver did not shoot at the Impala after hearing Gross break the Impala's back window. Oliver's first shot came only 0.358 seconds after the window broke. Obviously, he had already made up his mind to shoot before Gross broke the window. Furthermore, he kept shooting at the car as it passed Gross. The jury had the option to convict Oliver of murder, manslaughter, or aggravated assault with a weapon by a public servant. On August 28, 2018, after 13 hours of deliberation, the jury announced they had a verdict. A dozen sheriff's deputies filed into the courtroom, apparently to prevent any outbursts among the spectators. Judge Birmingham then read the written verdict.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant guilty of murder.
A former Texas police officer is now a convicted murderer. Facing the possibility of life behind bars, a jury found Roy Oliver guilty in the death of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards. In court, the young victim's family overwhelmed by the verdict.
It's been a long time. It's a hard year.
Oliver was acquitted of 2 counts of aggravated assault for shooting into the Impala. Following the verdict, Odell Edwards, father of Jordan Edwards, embraced the Dallas County District Attorney Faith Johnson. It had been 44 years since a police officer in Texas had been charged with committing a murder while carrying out his official duties. In 1973, convicted former Dallas officer Darrell Kane shot 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez in the head while Rodriguez sat handcuffed inside a squad car. In the end, the jury only sentenced Kane to 5 years in prison, and he was released in half that time. The verdict caught many by surprise, and people across the country were shocked that a white cop in Texas had been brought down for killing a black teenager. In a tweet, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, "White Texas police officer found guilty of murder for fatally shooting black teen in car. This life should never have been lost." After the verdict was delivered, the jury was tasked with deciding the punishment, and after 5.5 hours of deliberation, they finally agreed to a 15-year sentence, one for every year that Jordan lived, and a $10,000 fine. Neither side appeared happy with the verdict. Oliver's attorneys stated that they intended to appeal both the sentence and guilty verdicts. Almost 1 year to the date of sentencing, August 10th, 2020, Texas Fifth Court of Appeals rejected Oliver's appeal after rejecting all issues raised by Oliver's lawyers. Though not being eligible for parole until 2026, in January 2021, it was announced that Texas' highest criminal court agreed to review the murder conviction. The convicted former officer's appeals are related to whether the statements he made to internal affairs investigators were wrongly used against him in his criminal case. This issue came up numerous times during Oliver's trial, resulting in the trial judge and an immediate appeals court ruling that there was no evidence of the statements Oliver was required to give the police department for an internal investigation being used against him as a criminal defendant. I will be following the outcome, so be sure to subscribe for updates. I hope that the family of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards is able to find solace in the happy memories, and may his soul rest in perpetual peace.